2, 3, now! Okay. But this is the one I want to talk about, because this one will impact every one of you, and it's one we really got to get it right. For the first time, we have 4 generations working together. In fact, some people would say we have 5 generations working together, because we don't always know where to cut this Y generation off and the millennials, but we'll just kind of look at it from, is there any people in the room that are mature generation, born between 1909 and 1945? Anyone 1945 or less? Couple? Excellent, okay. How many people here are boomers? See, we're the problem. How many people are X generation? Woo, that's good. And how many people are Y generation? 1, 2, 3. 3. You will own the world. I can't tell you what kind of shape we're going to leave it in, but you will own the world. So I want to go through and talk about these, but here's what I want you to think about. Because a lot of us are baby boomers. I don't want you to think about, how are the baby boomers going to manage everyone else? Think about it from, how do I get along with everyone else? If you're an X generation, how are you going to manage the baby boomers? If you're Y generation, how are you going to manage the X and Y generation? How are you going to get along with somebody? Or how are you... Think about the cultural differences and how do we all work together, and how do we attract multi-generations that want to work in our environment as we move forward. So let's look a little bit in your company, the ones that think the most to the way that you are, and recruit people in your disengaged group. That's your big group, the 59%, because that 59%, they didn't join your organization to be disengaged. When you interviewed them, they didn't come up to the interview and say, hire me, I'm going to be the best disengaged person you ever hired. So everybody likes to show affection in a different way. And one that became very apparent for me was not that long ago, my mother and father had their 50th wedding anniversary. And they went out and they celebrated. And they go back to the house and they do what they did every single night. They had toast. So they're sitting down and my father cuts the toast and he puts it on and he goes over and he gives my mother the heel of the bread. And my mother starts to cry. And he goes, her name is Blanche. He goes, Blanchy, what's wrong? We had such a beautiful day. We were with the grandkids. We went out, had this nice meal. It's her 50th wedding anniversary. What's wrong? She goes, Rod, she said, for 50 years you've been giving me the heel of the bread. I hate the heel of the bread. And my father looked at my mother and he goes, Blanchy, I give you the heel of the bread because it's my favorite part. And you know what? We often do things for other people because we think it's what they want, but it's not what they want because we didn't ask the question on what it is and how we show affection for them. And it's the biggest reason why we fall out of every relationship. Friendships, work relationships, intimate relationships, even with our children. We stop showing affection the way that they like to receive it. When you sit down and you do a dream sheet, I have mine with me. I carry mine everywhere I go. I put all of the things that I ever set in it. But the interesting thing is, every once in a while, a weird story comes along. I'm giving a session in Moncton, and this lady comes up to me after. She goes, Eddie, she said, I don't get this dream sheet thing. And I said, look, I said, you got a minute? And she goes, yeah. And I said, grab a piece of paper, let's write things down. So she writes down her words where I want to manifest a horse. Now, all my years, vice president's titles, sales, I've never had to manifest a horse. This was a whole new thing for me. So anyway, I said, write down the date of when you want to manifest a horse. And it was July 25th. She just bought a new place in Prince Edward Island, and she wanted to manifest this horse by the next month. So anyway, I didn't think I'd ever hear from her again. Off she goes into the world. She calls me about a month later, and she said, Eddie, she said, the weirdest thing just happened to me. She said, I was in New Brunswick, and I was telling someone I'm working with an executive coach, which she wasn't. She said, I'm working with an executive coach. We're going to manifest a horse together. And she said, the woman just burst out laughing at her. And she said, I don't know anything about manifesting a horse, she said, but she said, there's a magazine here, and there's horses for sale in the back of it. So she picks up the magazine, she looks, she sees the perfect horse. So she calls a lady that has a horse for sale. She says, I understand you have a horse for sale. And the woman goes, no, dear, no. We decided not to sell that horse. She said, when did you see that? And she said, I saw that, she said, it's in this magazine. And she goes, that must be an old magazine. She looks at the front, sure enough, it was about 6 months old. She said, we couldn't find a suitable owner. Tell me a little bit about yourself. So the woman says, well, this is talking about herself. She said, look, you seem like a really nice person, but I noticed you're calling from New Brunswick, and we didn't want to sell the horse to anyone from New Brunswick. Not because people from New Brunswick were bad, mind you, but because she didn't live in New Brunswick, and she wanted to be close to the horse because she was quite attached to it. So the woman I knew looked at she looked at the phone, and she said, I noticed I'm calling 902, so I must be calling Nova Scotia. And the woman goes, no, dear. She said, actually, I live in PEI. She said, it's same exchange as Nova Scotia. So the lady said, well, I actually live in PEI. I bought land in PEI. That's why I wanted the horse. And she said, where did you buy land? And she said, I such and such a point. She said, what color house is yours? She said, my house is yellow. She said, isn't that interesting? I'm staring at your house out my back door right now. She said, I will sell you that horse. And she said, how much for the horse? She said, $6,500. She goes, oh, geez, I don't have $6,500. She said, let me think about it. She goes home to her mother, and she goes, Mom, she said, I found the perfect horse. She said, $6,500. I just don't have that money now because we just bought the house and everything. Her mother says, dear, I'll give you the $6,500. And she goes, Mom, I didn't know you had $6,500. She goes, that's why we never told you. You'd have taken it long ago. So on July the 24th, she sends a picture of the horse standing in her backyard. That's one of the weird stories, but the reality is when you write your goals down, things happen. And, psychologists call it RAS, your brain's ability to search for data. Like if you were to say today, I want to buy myself a new car, and you picked Honda Civic, and you wanted a blue one, and you wanted alloy wheels, you would notice every Honda Civic on the road when you left here. They were always there, but you wouldn't notice them. That's what goal setting is all about. That's when you grow your employees, it's about letting them sit down and see line of sight between the goals they want as human beings and where it fits into your organization. And believe me, clues will come along that will allow them to attract those goals into their lives. Last thing, there's a new one now, Workaholics Anonymous. The largest chapter of Workaholics Anonymous is in New York City. The last meeting they had, nobody showed up because they were too busy working and they couldn't show up for the Workaholics Anonymous. But I want to share with you a story on the importance of focus, on focusing what you want as an outcome. And you know what, I think this is kind of a really neat setting because we're in an educational environment. And it's where people really learn to focus on what they want as an outcome. A teacher, her name is this is a true story. Miss Thompson walks into the class. She looks at her class and she goes, you know what? I'm going to love every student in here exactly the same. But she knew it wasn't true because there's a little boy in there. His name was Billy Stoddard. And Billy was disruptive. He had poor personal hygiene. He was picking on people in the schoolyard all the time. And she was dreading Billy being in her class. So sure enough, as the year started out, it was exactly the way she had anticipated. He was causing trouble, and he was picking fights with other kids. He was doing really bad in school. So she started to get a little bit of pleasure out of putting F's on his marks. So about a month goes by or so, and she's supposed to read the reports from the previous years. So she gets to all the reports, and she actually leaves his go till the end. And she's reading through it, and it goes, Billy is an absolutely wonderful child. Everybody loves him. He's a pleasure to have in the class. Grade primary. She thought that was odd. She reads the next year, and it says, oh, Billy's not doing very good this year. He's really starting to fall behind in class, and he's struggling quite a bit. And we suspect it has something to do with his mother's illness. Another year goes by, and she reads it and goes, Billy's not doing very good at all this year. His grades have really slipped. He's picking fights in the schoolyard. He's hard to get along with in class. We suspect that has something to do with the death of his mother. It goes one more year, and it says, oh, Billy's not doing very good at all this year. Poor personal hygiene. He's always picking fights. He's not doing good in school. He's not paying attention. We suspect that has something to do with his father having such a hard time managing at home without his wife. So she looks at it, and she starts to cry. And she says, you know what? I'm not going to think about math or science or any of those things again. I'm going to think about the outcome, where I want this child to go. I'm going to think about the things that are right about this child. So a couple days go by. It's just approaching Christmas. And they come in with their little Christmas presents, and Billy's got a poorly wrapped present in a little brown paper bag. And all the kids start making fun of him, and she goes, shh. She opens all the gifts, and she opens his at the end. And when she opens it up, it's a little rhinestone bracelet with a couple rhinestones missing and 3/4 of a bottle of cologne. He looks at her, he said, Miss Thompson, that was my mother's favorite bracelet, and that was her favorite scent. So every time Billy had a test or something, she would wear the bracelet, and she would wear a little squirt of the cologne. Now, this was before the scent-free policy we have in the schools now, because you wouldn't be allowed to do that. And as the year went on, things got better and things got better. At the end of the year, Billy wrote a little note to the teacher, and he said, Dear Miss Thompson, I just want to let you know, this is the best year I ever had in school. You're the best teacher I ever had. I love you very much. Now, see the impact it has when you focus on what you want as an outcome, as opposed to focusing on all the things that wasn't right about Billy. So a couple more years go by, and Billy's in high school, and she receives another note, and it says, Dear Miss Thompson, I just want to let you know I'm in high school. I'm struggling. It's hard. My father's not feeling very well. But I want to let you know that you're the best teacher I ever had, and I love you very much. She is changing his life by focusing on something different. A couple more years go by, she receives another note. And it said, Dear Miss Thompson, I just want to let you know my father has passed away. I'm just finishing up university, and I want to let you know the impact you've had on my life. I love you very much. Signed, William Stoddard, MD. Now see the impact because of what she focused on that moment in his life. But it didn't end there. She gets another note, and it says, Dear Miss Thompson, I've met the person of my dreams, and I would like for you to come to our wedding. She arrives at the church, and they bring her to the front of the church, and they put her in the pew, put aside for the mother of the groom, and she sits there with the rhinestone bracelet and the scent of his mother. That's the impact we can have on people when we focus on what we like about people and what we want as an outcome.